Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into Milton Friedman's Money Mischief to solve a puzzle that is just hiding in plain sight, one that affects every single one of us. What actually is money? So, let's kick things off with a little thought experiment. You've got a $5 bill, right? It can get you a coffee, maybe a snack. Then you take a piece of paper from a magazine. It's the same size, same greenish color, but it's totally worthless. Why? What is the magic that makes one piece of paper valuable and the other one trash? To get to the bottom of that question, Friedman takes us on this wild journey. I mean, we're going from a tiny island in the Pacific to the U.S. Treasury back in the 1800s. And we're even going to talk about helicopters dropping cash from the sky. It sounds crazy, but trust me, together, these stories completely unravel the mystery of money. Okay, so our first stop, our first big clue, comes from a place you would probably never expect. The little island of Yap, out in the middle of the Pacific, which had one of the most bizarre and honestly brilliant monetary systems ever. So get this. The people of Yap used these enormous limestone wheels called fei as their money. And the craziest part? The limestone didn't even come from their island. They had to go on these incredibly dangerous voyages, 400 miles across the open ocean, just to quarry these things and bring them back. It was that immense effort, that risk, that gave the stones their value. And this is where the story gets really, really interesting. There was this one wealthy family whose entire fortune was based on a massive fei, one that sank in a storm generations ago. It was literally at the bottom of the ocean, and yet everyone on the island acknowledged that the family was still rich. The physical stone didn't matter. What mattered was that everyone agreed it had value. Now, you might be thinking, okay, weird ancient story, what's the point? But Friedman's whole argument is that this isn't so different from our own more sophisticated systems. For years, a huge chunk of France's gold reserve wasn't even in France. It was in a vault in New York. It was just a number on a ledger, a bookkeeping entry, but it backed their financial power. Just like that sunken stone, its value is based entirely on a shared belief. A social convention. And this power of belief was put to the ultimate test. When German colonial authorities were on the island, they wanted the locals to repair some roads. The islanders weren't interested. So what did the Germans do? They didn't take the stones. No, they just went around and painted black crosses on the most valuable fei, declaring them property of the government. Instantly, the owners of those stones felt poor, and boom, the roads got fixed. It's the perfect illustration that money is just a powerful story we all agree on. So the Yap story shows us how incredibly stable a system can be when everyone believes in the rules. But what happens when someone just decides to change those rules? For that, we've got to go back to a really pivotal moment in American history. See, for a long time, the U.S. ran on something called bimetallism. The government basically said, okay, a dollar is worth this much silver and it's worth this much gold. They tried to lock the two metals together at a fixed ratio. Then came 1873. A pretty standard coinage act gets passed, but buried deep inside it was one little change. It quietly, almost secretly, got rid of the free coinage of silver dollars. This little tweak, which people later called the crime of 1873, basically pushed the entire U.S. onto a gold standard, just as all these other big countries were doing the same thing. All of a sudden, everyone wanted gold. And the result? It was a slow-motion disaster. The amount of money in the system just couldn't keep up with the growing economy, and that led to this long, painful period of deflation. Prices fell, on average, 1.7% every single year for more than 20 years. Now, I know 1.7% doesn't sound like a huge number, but it was absolutely devastating. Imagine you're a farmer and you took out a loan to buy a tractor. Because prices are falling, the money you have to pay back is actually worth more than the money you originally borrowed. Your debt is getting heavier and heavier every single year. This caused unbelievable hardship and kicked off decades of populist rage. It's a brutal, real-world lesson in the dangers of, well, money mischief. Okay, so the crime of 1873 showed us the pain of having too little money growth. That's deflation. But what about the other side of the coin? Since 1971, when the dollar was officially cut loose from gold, the world has been running on pure fiat money. And that brings us to the kind of mischief we're all a lot more familiar with: inflation. So why do prices go up? Friedman gives us this great little story to explain it. Picture this. A helicopter flies over your town and just starts dropping cash. Everybody's bank account instantly doubles. You'd feel rich, right? You'd run out the door to go buy that thing you've always wanted. But so would everybody else. And here's the kicker. The number of cars for sale, the number of houses, the amount of stuff in the stores, none of that has changed. So what happens? a giant bidding war. And in the end, prices just double. You have twice as much money, but you can't actually buy any more than you could before. And that right there, that disconnect, is what economists call the money illusion. From your own point of view, more money feels like more wealth. But for the whole community, if there isn't more stuff to buy, more money just means higher prices. It's that simple. Inflation, at its core, is what happens when the supply of money grows faster than the real economy.
And look, this isn't just some academic theory. It has massive consequences. As the famous economist John Maynard Keynes put it, messing with a country's currency is one of the surest ways to completely wreck a society. It destroys trust, it creates chaos, it can tear everything apart.
So we've gone from stone wheels on a remote island to helicopters dropping cash. After all that, what's the final verdict here? What are the big takeaways from Friedman's money mischief?
Well, first, we've learned that money, whether it's a rock or a piece of paper, is really just a powerful social convention. Its value comes from our shared belief. Second, the actual form of money matters way less than our trust in the system itself. Third, and this is crucial, messing with that trust, money mischief, has severe, real-world consequences, whether it's causing deflation or inflation. And finally, inflation is, at its root, a monetary thing. It's what happens when you print money faster than you produce real goods and services. Which means that whoever controls the money supply holds an immense amount of power.
And that brings us to Friedman's final, pretty provocative thought. He famously took a quote about war and applied it to economics, saying money is just too serious a subject to be left to the central bankers. So if the power over money is the power to hold society together or tear it apart, who exactly should we trust with it? That's a question worth thinking about. Thanks for watching The Explainer.